Okay, so what we're going to be covering today for the introduction session is how to sign up for a Mailchimp account, how to create a list, how to import your contacts into that list from a couple of different platforms, and then we're going to talk about tags, which you'll understand a little bit as we get into that. And then we're going to go over a little bit of publicity settings, your archive bar, how to authenticate your account, some of the nuts and bolts to really get your account up and ready to use. Before we go over to Mailchimp, I want to jump over to the resource website. So you should have seen this when you were registering. And so if you didn't get a chance to look at the page, just know there's an outline here for the webinar if you want to take notes on it. And then there's also these different templates down here. So I get a lot of people asking, what's the final product? What are we kind of working towards? So I wanted to show you that. And you'll notice that there's samples on one side and templates on the other. The samples are going to be examples for you to see. The right side is actual templates. Once you have your Mailchimp account, if you click on one of these, it'll upload into your Mailchimp so that you don't have to create your own template. Okay. I just wanted to show you one or two of the samples so you kind of get a feel for what's going on. So you'll have the ability to have a banner, and here's the text and some buttons. So it just kind of gives it a nice look. The reason that we have started promoting Mailchimp over, say, just including a PDF in a regular email, so there are a couple of reasons. The primary reason is that statistics show that 60 to 70% of people are only checking their emails on their telephone or their mobile device. And because of that, if you send just a PDF, some people aren't willing to open PDFs on their phone. They're worried about the attachment having a virus, or maybe they don't have a PDF reader on their phone. And then if they do open it, they're going to have to zoom in and zoom out on your newsletter to be able to read the text. And people have low attention spans these days, and so many people aren't willing to go through that effort to read our updates. So what's nice about Mailchimp is it has a responsive interface so that the content automatically resizes no matter what size device it's on. So it just makes it easier for your partners to be able to read your content without having to open anything extra, without having to resize anything, without having to zoom in, zoom out, etc. So that's one of the main reasons. Another is that you no longer have to batch your emails when you use Mailchimp. So when you use a traditional email client, say Google or Outlook, you have to batch them in 15 to 20 to prevent your emails from going into a spam filter. With Mailchimp, you no longer have to do that. So even if you have 800 people on your mailing list, you can send the email all at once instead of having to batch them into smaller groups. And you still don't have to worry about the spam filter depending on how many contacts you're sending out. Okay, so that's a nice feature of it. Yeah, so let me know if you have any questions about that. But those are some of the reasons that we encourage Mailchimp use. And this is one of the things that it can look like. Now, one thing that lots of people don't like, and there's not a way around this, is that Mailchimp does not provide you with a PDF version of your newsletter. You actually have to create the PDF yourself. And so what we encourage people to do is to have a Mailchimp template and another template in whether it's Publisher or Word, however you've typically created your printout newsletters, and so that you can copy and paste your content quickly back and forth between those templates. If you're sending to churches or if you have partners who print out your newsletters, please do still create that version of it. And I'll show you next week how to attach a PDF to your Mailchimp newsletter, because we have gotten some feedback from churches that says, hey, these look really nice and we can't print them out. We want to print them out for our church. So if you have people on your list that that's important for, do make sure you're still doing that aspect of your newsletters. With that, we're going to go ahead and hop over to Mailchimp. And so this is your sort of introductory screen, right? This changes quite often, but there'll always be some button that says sign up free on it, and that's what you're going to be looking for. Okay, so go ahead and click sign up free. Okay, so we're going to get started with our free account here. As you're putting in or choosing which email address to use, make sure that it's an organizational email address. The reason for that is, oh, they're actually making me do an email right now. Okay, sorry, they like to change this on me all the time, and so I jump in thinking I know what they're going to ask, and they change it. So Sorry, can't type and talk. Make sure it's an organizational email because Mailchimp actually doesn't allow free emails. So if you're using Gmail, Yahoo Mail, Juno Mail, any of those aren't going to be allowed in Mailchimp. And the reason for that is Mailchimp goes through great pains to make sure that their platform isn't used for spamming people or no sort of robot interaction is occurring. And so this is one of the many measures that they use to make sure that happens, okay, is to make sure that you're using it in the organizational email. Come up with a username. Username can be anything you want. My computer's not cooperating. Okay, and then you're also going to want to create a password. For the password, notice that there are 5 criteria. So you need to have at least 1 lowercase, 1 uppercase, 1 number, 1 special character, and then 8 characters minimum. Special characters are going to include anything that's not a number or letter. So the pound sign, a space, a period, underscore, exclamation point, anything that's not alphanumeric. And it won't actually let you click get started until you've met the password specifications. Okay, so once you've done both of those, it'll tell you your password is secure and you're all set. And then you can click get started. Okay, so you're going to have to check your email. Switch over to Outlook real quick. And it's just a confirmation email. So you're just going to click on this button that says activate your account. I'm going to close this. Let it know that you're not a robot. This screen changes from time to time, so if you're watching the recording and it's a checkbox or there's something else that you have to do, just follow the instructions to show them that you're not a robot. And then go ahead and fill in your name. Here you can put more than 1 name, so if you're a spouse, if you're a husband and wife couple, you might want to put Bill and Jan or Bob and Jane, whatever your names are. It'd be helpful to have both of them here. And click continue. Now, this says it wants the name of your business, but we're not going to give them Wycliffe or JARS or SIL. We're actually just going to put our name again. The reason for that is in the footer of your emails, a required footer, so it's content that you cannot delete, it's going to copyright your newsletter to whoever you put in this slot. So we don't want it to copyright it to the organization. We want it to copyright to you. Okay. What's your website? You can put any website that you want in here, but you have to put a website. Okay, so it doesn't have to be wycliffe.org. It can be a personal website. It can be your Facebook account, an Instagram account. It can be your personal missionary page. It can be any website you want, but there does have to be one. So again, they're trying to make sure that you're not setting up a spam account. And this is another measure that they do to do that. Okay. Once you've gotten that, click OK or continue. Now you're going to add your address. Again, this is your personal address. You don't want this to be a business address. And click continue once you have all of the information. Do you have a list of email subscribers? We're not going to do this here just because I want this to be appropriate for those who already have an account and those who do. Okay. So click, or you don't, click continue. We're going to skip this. We'll talk a little bit more about Facebook in the tips and tricks webinar. And then let's find your marketing path. We're not going to be marketing, so we're going to click not right now. We don't want any bundles, so we're going to say not right now. All right, so your account's ready. Do you want to kickstart your Mailchimp skills? So this is an optional email that you can choose to subscribe or not subscribe to. It's really not going to be super beneficial to you because it is for e-commerce. We're not using it for e-commerce, so typically a lot of the information that comes through there is not going to be beneficial for us. So I would leave it unchecked. If you want to see what the emails are like, feel free, and then click Let's Go. One thing, I've been getting a question lately about what does Mailchimp do with the emails that I upload into this. So Mailchimp is not going to take your contact list and use it for their promotions. They don't sell the user information. They don't sell your contact information. So you can feel confident that the information that you're using is safe. Okay? That is one of their policies. They don't abuse any of the email addresses that you put into Mailchimp. Okay. So we've got our account set up. One thing I want you to be aware of is in the upper right-hand corner, your name should be here, and you'll see that there's a bunch of different options. If you go down to Account and then go to Account Settings, this is where you're going to be able to change the information that we just set. So if you move and need to change your physical address, or you've already set up your account and you put your organization name and you need to change that, this is where you would go to fix it. You can either do profile or account. It's essentially going to take you to the same place. Either way, click Settings, and it'll give you the option to edit any of those settings. If you get stuck with any of that, let me know. Reach out by email, and we can set up a time, and I can help you figure out what's going on. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a list. So some Mailchimp terminology for you. A list is just where your contacts are going to be stored. So if you're going to be importing contacts from an Excel sheet, donor manager, TNT, I'm going to show you here in a minute, you have to actually create your list first before you can put the contacts into it. And that'll make a little bit more sense as we're kind of going along here. I'm going to click List at the top of my screen. One thing about lists is, and I'm going to delete this list that's already here, just so that I'm showing you how to create it from scratch. Notice when you delete something in Mailchimp that you have to type delete, and you have to type it all in caps. So if I type this in lowercase, it's going to reject my delete. Okay. As you're creating lists, we typically encourage people to only create one list and not many lists. The reason for that is if you create, say, 3 lists, and one of your partners is in all 3 of them, and they choose to hit the unsubscribe button on one of your campaigns. When they do that, they've not been unsubscribed from the other 2. Same thing if they were updating their email address. Okay, so partners through Mailchimp are able to update their own contact information. If a partner were to update their information for one list, and they were in 3 separate lists, that information would not automatically be updated in all of them. It would only be updated in the one. So you'd have to be extra careful to really watch that your partners are getting what they need from each of your lists. So to prevent that, we encourage you to just have one list, and then a little bit later we're going to talk about something called tags that's going to allow you to send to just segments of that list. So I have 200 contacts in my list, but I only want to send to the people who are in Texas this time. I'm going to show you how to make tags so that you can do that while only maintaining, so you don't need a separate Texas list. If that's unclear, just kind of bear with me, and I think it'll become clear as we keep going here. There are some times when multiple lists are appropriate. And so one of the times I've seen that happen is with recruiters. And the reason it was appropriate for them to have separate lists is because they had one list that was all students and one list that was their partners, and none of those contacts overlapped. And so if you're in a situation where you have 2 completely separate sets of contacts, and one group is never going to get emails that the other group gets, then it's appropriate for you to have more than one list. So hopefully that's clear. Let me know if that part's not clear. So we're going to go ahead and click the Create List button. We're going to give it a list name. You do want the list name to be something appropriate, because if you decide to use sign-up sheets later or sign-up forms through Mailchimp, the people who are signing up are going to end up seeing this list name. So do make it something that makes sense, that you're okay with other people seeing. Default email address is because the people who receive your emails are going to see it come from this email address, not from Mailchimp. Okay, so you want this to be whatever email address you want people to see it come from. You can't put more than one email in here. So if you're husband, wife, you can't put both of your emails in here. It's only one or the other. Now the default name, you can put both. So here's where you would put both of your names. Scrolling down, we need to write a short note about how people got signed up to your list. Again, this is a security feature on Mailchimp, proof that you're not spamming people, okay? And so you want this to not be super specific. So we don't want you to write something like, you're receiving these updates because you attended my home meeting on Wednesday night and asked to be updated. Okay, we want it to be something that's going to apply to everybody who ends up on your list. So an example could be something like, oops, you're receiving this email because you have, oops. Okay, one thing, and it doesn't have to say exactly what I've written here, this is just an example, but if you are going to be talking about your Wycliffe ministry, it's really, 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 really important that you say Wycliffe. Okay, it can't be my ministry, it can't be our ministry, it has to be Wycliffe, my Wycliffe ministry, and that's because of IRS regulations. If in order for Wycliffe to keep their non-for-profit status, we have to have Wycliffe before ministry. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind as you're writing these statements. You can check your contact information for this list. Form settings, if you're enabling double opt-in, this means if somebody, this is not when you import contacts, this is if somebody uses a subscribe form, which we're going to talk about in a few weeks. But if somebody uses a subscribe form and you have this checked, they're going to receive a second email that says, are you sure? And they're going to have to say yes, and then they'll be in. You don't have to do this. If you don't do this and people use the subscribe form, they'll just be added to your list when they subscribe. So if this is important for you, check it. If not, don't. The GDPR, if that's applicable to you, of course you're going to want to check that. If it's not, if you're living in the United States, this probably isn't a big deal for you. Notifications is going to be if people are using subscribe forms, or if they unsubscribe, you're going to get emails from Mailchimp letting you know that happened. My personal preference is the daily summary, because if you have, say, 20 people signed up at one time, do you want 20 emails or do you want one? If you only want one, you'd click the daily summary. And then click Save. All right, so we have a list, but of course there's no contacts in the list yet, and that's what we're going to talk about now. I'm going to show you 3 different ways to do this. The reason that I'm going to be showing you Donor Manager and TNT Connect is because those are 2 programs that we encourage members to use as donor management software programs. So it tracks partners giving, it tracks communications with partners, and those different kinds of things. And so since we promote those, we want to show people how to be able to export their contacts out of those programs to get them into Mailchimp. Okay. So the first one is Donor Manager. I'm not an expert on Donor Manager, so I'm only going to be able to give you kind of minimal information about how to do this part of it. But if you go over to the email tab inside of Donor Manager and then use this create a CSV, you'll see that Mailchimp is actually in the description. Okay, and then you can set your other preferences as to which groups of people you want to be involved. But once you have it, you can go ahead and export and save your file. Now, the difficult thing about Donor Manager is that it creates an Excel sheet for you with your contacts information, but it takes the email addresses. So if you have 3 email addresses for a married couple, they smash them into one field. You're going to have to separate those out. So if you have 3 emails in one field, you're going to want to create 2 new contacts. So it's 1 email per record. Okay. Same thing with names. Is Donor Manager puts the first name and the last name into the same cell, and those need to be in separate columns. So you're looking for 3 columns. You want it to have the first name in one, the last name in one, and email in one. For each email address, you have to have a separate record. Okay? There's no way to get around that. You have to do that or it won't import correctly. The second one I wanted to show you is TNT Connect. TNT Connect is nicer than Donor Manager because it syncs directly to Mailchimp. Okay, so if you go to Tools and you go down to the little monkey face where it says Sync with Mailchimp, it's going to tell you which list or give you an option to select which list you want to sync. So you can't, so if you do have multiple lists, you can't sync both of them. You can only sync one. So click select. It's asking for your Mailchimp API key. The way you find that is by clicking this blue link right here. It's going to automatically open up Mailchimp and give me my API key. Okay, and so I'm just going to copy the API key, go back over to TNT and paste it, and then say next. Okay, so if you have more than one list, it'll show up here. Select the one that you want, and click next. Okay, and you'll see that you have some options here. You have to have email selected, email, first name, last name, because that's what's relevant to Mailchimp. But then you can choose if you want to have these other fields as well, and they're going to show up with some. They're going to show up as usable with something called merge tags in Mailchimp, and that will become clear when we talk about that in advanced tools. So that's in the 4th week that I talk more about that. But select the fields that you want. TNT is a donor management software program. Okay, so it's similar to Donor Manager. It's just so we just have 2 options, right? Both of them do essentially the same functions. TNT has more bells and whistles than Donor Manager has. So those are going to be the differences that you see between them. But TNT is just another way to keep track of your donor information. If you've never used TNT or Donor Manager before, what does one do? No, I'm going to show you an Excel. I'm getting there. Give me just a second. Okay, so click OK, and then you're going to click Sync. Notice mine goes really fast because I've only got 20 contacts in my list. If you have hundreds, expect this process to be a little bit longer. Okay, it's going to give you an opportunity to say which contacts you want to move into Mailchimp. If you want all, you can click check all, or you can check them one by one, and then click add to Mailchimp, and they're going to automatically move them over. It's also going to give you an opportunity to look for the contacts that are only in Mailchimp. So if you have people who subscribe directly to Mailchimp and you want to move them over to TNT, this is going to give you that opportunity to be able to do that. Okay. Then you would click next. It lets you know that it's going to log a history item in your TNT Connect database, and then click OK. If you're not using TNT or Mailchimp, what I recommend you do is still not do it one by one because you're going to make yourself crazy with how long that will take. But if you go ahead and set up an Excel sheet like this, a lot of email clients, if you have a lot of contacts in your email program, you can export them from there. I don't go through different email programs in this webinar just because there's so many different email clients. I don't have time during the session. But when you get the FAQ, one of the resources that I have in the FAQ is addressing different email clients and how to export your data out. If you get stuck, just send me an email and we'll set up a time to meet and I will help you figure it out. Okay, so you're not on your own if you get trapped. Setting up your Excel sheet, this is what we're looking for. So it doesn't matter if it's in this order, it matters that you have this information. Okay, so you have to have one column with email addresses. And remember I said only one email address per row. A column with last names, column with first names. And then this D column is optional. Okay, so which I actually don't recommend using anymore because I'm going to show you a different way. We used to teach groups in Mailchimp, and Mailchimp is slowly moving people over to a tag system instead, which will make sense when we get over there. So you can kind of ignore that column. But I guess the takeaway from that is that you can create extra columns if you want. If there's some sort of column of information you want, it's just pretty easy to create your own. And you'll kind of see how that works as we get over there. Once you have your information, either from TNT, it's already in there, but once you have it in your Excel sheet, we're going to go back over to TNT or to Mailchimp. Okay. And I'm going to go to Add Contacts. Now, if you do want to add your contacts one by one, so say you already have your 200 contacts in here, but somebody wants to be added to your list, you can use this Add a Subscriber function, and it'll let you just add one person. Okay, the thing that you want to make sure to check is this person gave you permission to email them. you do want to check that. If it's not checked, they're not going to receive your updates. Okay. To import from our Excel sheet, we're going to go to import contacts, and there's a couple of different options. So if you have a lot of contacts, you're probably going to want to do this uploading CSV or tab delimited text file. And what I should have said is back here, if you have it in an Excel sheet, you want to save it as a CSV. You don't want to save it as an Excel. If you save it as an XLSX, it's not going to import into a Mailchimp. So just make sure you check that your file type as you're saving it. So I'm actually going to switch it over to copy paste from file, because that typically seems to be the one that everybody is curious about. And it's a little bit easier for some people, I suppose. So if I check copy and paste, we're then going to go down to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and click next. And I'm going to make a little bit of a big deal out of this next button here, just because lots and lots of people think that the next button is going to be here in the middle of the screen, and then they get frustrated because they don't know what to do next. If you get frustrated, try to remember that I said look at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, because that's where next is going to hide. It might seem silly, but it'll save you a headache if you can remember that. So here we're going to actually copy and paste our information into this field. So I'm going to go to my Excel sheet and copy my data. Okay, notice that I'm not grabbing the names of the titles, or the title names of the columns. And then hit Control-V or right-click paste. Right, and there's all your contacts. You do need to check this box. I understand that my billing plan may be automatically upgraded. There's no risk in checking this box for us, because we've not given them any of our financial information. There's no way for them to charge us. In the Forever Free plan, you have up to 2,000 contacts. So they would start wanting people to pay if you're using over 2,000 contacts. That doesn't apply to anybody that I know. So what I want you to hear is that checking this isn't going to have any risk for you. Once you have that, click Next. And then these are our columns. So you'll notice that they've already figured out which column is my email address. So it's already saved. The next column is unnamed, and this is my last name column. So I'm going to say, edit. We're going to make a collection, or make a selection, and click last name, and then click save. This one is their first names, so I'm going to go down to first name and click save. And then I'm going to tell them to skip this one, because I don't want it imported into my database. Okay, so once you're done, you're going to click next. This is one of the screens where people get frustrated because they scroll down thinking there'll be something here. The next button's over in the right-hand corner. Okay, so it's telling me the import method that I'm using. I've only chosen to import 3 of the 4 columns. I don't have any tags set up yet. I want them to be subscribed. You don't want to change this. And then you would check this if you already have contacts in here and that some of those contacts might be replicated. The information is new. It's letting them know that the contact already exists. We just want you to update it with the new information. And then click Import in the bottom right-hand corner. There we go. Okay, so you'll see 10 contacts were added to my list. 2 emails were either invalid or role-based. You want to click on those links and check that out if you end up with emails that aren't accepted. A few things could be happening. Role-based means that you have an email that's something like admin@crosspoint.com or info@something.com. Those are considered role-based emails. If your church is a role-based email and it doesn't allow you to subscribe the church to your list, you're going to have to forward the email. You're going to have to forward the email to them. Okay, so once it's sent out, you'll be able to grab a link and share that with your church. If you need me to go over that in more detail, let me know, and we can do that at the end of the session. Just kind of keep that in mind. And then the other reason that emails could be rejected is if you put more than one email into the same cell, if you accidentally put an extra space or a character that doesn't belong in the email, you forgot the @ sign, that makes the email invalid, and they're not going to let you import it. So there's a variety of reasons, but you're going to have to end up checking out your Excel form. If this happens to you and you can't figure out what's wrong, again, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to take a look at it and see if we can't figure it out. Now I have 22 contacts because it's my TNT contacts plus the ones I just did from my Excel sheet. So this is your list of contacts, and that's all there is to getting your contacts into your list. Now this is where I would use to teach how to create groups, but they've actually made a more simple way to do that, and that's called tags. And so what tags are for is if you want to send your newsletter to only a portion of your list. So I only want to send it to my financial partners. I only want to send it to my advisory prayer team. I only want to send it to people in a particular location. In order to do that, you have to set a tag. You have to tag those contacts so that Mailchimp knows that they are part of that segment. So what that looks like is, say I want to create a segment, or I want to send my email to only my prayer team. So to do that, I would select the people who are on that team from my list. And so maybe I have these 6 people that are part of that list. And now I want to go up to this button that says Add or Remove Tags. And you just type in the name of the group. So this is my prayer team. Okay, click Enter. Right, and now you'll see this new column appeared in your Mailchimp that says Tags, and it says Prayer Team next to the people that you want to send it to. Now, and you can do that as many times as you want. So you can have more than one tag for the same partners, and you can use as many as is going to be effective and helpful for you. You can set these up in your list. If you have a partner who is has more than one tag, and you're sending the email to both of those groups, that partner will not receive the email twice. They'll still only receive it once. So don't worry about that. Once you have your tags set, the way to use the tags is when you actually create a campaign. Okay, so when you create a campaign, I'm just going to create a test one real quick. I know I'm going through this really fast, but I'm going to share this in way more detail next week. Okay, so I'll slow down and explain all the things that I'm doing. But what I want you to see is this very first option here too. Who are you sending the campaign to? Click Add Recipients, choose the list. So I'm choosing the list of all my partners. And now this segment or tag is going to let me choose the people that I just put the tag on. So I go to Tags, Prayer Team, okay, and click Save. And now it's only going to the 6 people that I put the tag on. Okay, so that's the way you segment your list once you have it all set up. Do we have any questions so far? I know I'm hitting a lot of this pretty fast, so let me know if I'm losing you. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is your publicity settings. Over the years, sorry, we had a question. Over the years, I've accumulated about 650 email addresses in my Google contacts. Only about 250 of those are partners. Is there a way to only import the 250 partner email addresses, Google contacts, or will I need to create a spreadsheet? Clean it up. Regardless, you're going to have it into an Excel sheet. So I don't know the ins and outs of Google contacts. I don't know if there's a way to only export a portion of those or not. I suspect that it's going to be easiest to just export everything and then delete the records that you don't need. So I would recommend that. So I don't know if Google Contacts even separates out the first and last names. So you're really just going to have to try it and see how that goes. Sure. The next thing that we're going to talk about is publicity settings. And so there's a lot of people have lots of security questions, and I've put a lot of that information into the FAQ for this webinar. So if you would please check out the FAQ before asking security questions, I would appreciate that. The reason that we do that is because we spent one of these webinars talking about security issues for over 20 minutes, and it caused me to have to speed up even faster what's already kind of coming at you quickly. So if you'll check that out and then find that you still have more questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll do what I can to help you with those questions at that point. Right now we're going to look at publicity settings. This is going to give you some control over how many people can see it if that's something that you're concerned about. Okay, so if we go ahead and go over to the top right-hand corner where your name is and go down to account. Oh, that's not true. Sorry about that. Go over to lists. The reason that we're going to lists instead of our account is because the publicity settings are going to be specific for each list. So if you're somebody who did end up creating 2 or 3 lists, you would have to set this for each individual list. It's not for your account as a whole. So go over to this little arrow that's next to the stats and click settings. And then you're going to scroll down to where it says publicity settings. So there's a couple of things that you can do from the screen. The first is the promote my campaigns. So yes, my campaigns are public. I want them to be discovered. If you don't want people outside of the people who have subscribed, if you hear that beeping, I'm sorry, I don't know where it's coming from. If you don't want people to be able to access your newsletters who haven't subscribed, you want to click this no. My campaigns for this list are not public. This means that in a couple of webinars, I'm going to show you how to forward campaigns properly. That function won't work for you if you don't have this button chosen. Okay. The next thing is the archive bar. The archive bar is looking at, let me pull this up real quick. The archive bar is looking at this right here. So if somebody clicks view this email in your browser, which you'll understand a little bit better next week, they'll be taken to this screen in their web browser, and they'll have a subscribe button, and they'll have a past issues. If they click on past issues, they're going to be able to see several newsletters. So it's not going to be every newsletter that you've ever sent, but you'll see this goes all the way back to 2017. So anybody who has this link would have access to all these past newsletters. If you don't want people to have access to this, you can turn off your archive bar here. If you turn this off, then that option completely goes away. However, it's nice to have this here because this is one of the places where you can share with your partners what's going on. Or if you can share with your church, or you can share with somebody who wants back issues of your newsletter. So it's really how much security do you need versus who do you need to be able to share it with. It's going to depend on how you want to set those. And that's really all there is to this specific screen. And again, let us know if you have questions come up.
There is a question in the chat about the view in browser link and how you got that. Okay,
so the view browser link is automatically put there when you create a new campaign. Yeah, I'm going to go into that a lot more next week. But when we set up our template, this is one of the things that Mailchimp automatically places in your newsletters. And the reason that it's there, and we don't really want that link to go away, is because there are some email clients, like Outlook, for example, where a lot of times the newsletters don't appear exactly as they should. And they can click on that view email in your browser, and that way they'll be able to see it in this white screen. I'll make sure to point that out to you next week. The last thing that I want to go over today is how to verify and authenticate your account. We used to do that in the Tips or Tricks webinar. We've moved it here because it's become more important. Wycliffe has recently changed their security settings so that if your account is not authenticated, you won't be able to send an email from Mailchimp. Okay, so authenticating is critical. To do it, we're going to go to our profile again at the top upper right-hand corner and go down to account. Okay. From account, we're going to go to settings and go down to domains. Okay, so I went to my profile, settings, domains. And here's where you'll see verify a domain. So you go ahead and click that. Well, you'll also see wycliffe.org is already verified. And so now it should do that automatically. Okay, so if you have more than one email address in here, that's when you would need to click this button, verify a domain. And what they would do is they would send you an email verifying that that is indeed your email, like they did in the beginning, right? So when I set up my account, they sent me an email, and I had to click on that verification button before it let me have my account. the same idea. To authenticate, you just go over to this right and click on the authenticate option, and you'll see all this kind of scary text, and just completely ignore it. So this is stuff that Wycliffe had to set up on their side. SIL folks, you also want to do this. Click authenticate domain, and you're done. That's all there is to it. Another nice feature of authentication is that it's another way to keep your emails out of people's spam boxes. And so we've seen, even if you're not using Wycliffe or SIL, if you're able to authenticate, do go ahead and take the steps to do that, because it's going to give your emails a better chance of getting where we want them to go. Any questions?
Jen, I know previously if you had authenticated, you could not send emails to SIL addresses. Is that still the case, or have they changed their policy?
They changed their policy.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's all better. Where is this specifically located? This, what I'm doing right now is under your profile. So if you go into this upper right-hand corner where your name is and click profile, that'll bring you to this screen. Well, that's not true. It'll bring you to this screen. And then you'll go to settings, domains. Okay, so here, profile, settings, domains. And then you'll have that option to the far right to authenticate. And so today we covered how to set up your email account, how to set up a list, how to import your contacts into the list, how to use tags, and then we covered authentication and some security features. That's all the content that we had for today, so feel free to go ahead and ask any questions that you have. So we want it to be Wycliffe, or is this SIL and Wycliffe? They're both okay. Either one is okay. There used to be some issues with SIL, but that's since been resolved. In the past, Wycliffe wanted members working with SIL to use a wycliffe.org email address for their Wycliffe admin business. Can we have both email addresses in the same email account? So first, do whatever your sending organization wants you to do. Okay, their authority is over mine, so make sure you're following whatever they ask you. You can have both. So here where it says verify domain, right, you can click this button and you can verify so if you want Wycliffe and SIL to be verified, you can do that here. Where that becomes important is when you're setting up your campaign. One of the things that it's going to ask you to do, thanks Stephen, one of the things they're going to ask you for when you're editing it or before you're able to send it out, is it's going to want you to say who it's from. Okay, so if you have an SIL address and the Wycliffe address in your Mailchimp account, you have to pick one or the other. You can't use both. Okay, same thing with a husband and wife. You can't have the husband and wife's email here. It has to be one or the other. Now, this particular email, it does not appear in your campaign, so they're not going to see it anywhere. If you want people to...
It is the one they reply to, though. If they hit reply to the email, that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So that's why you need to choose one.
Yeah. If you want your emails to be visible, we'll show you next week how to put that into your footer so that people can see them. But yes, if they hit reply, it's going to reply to the email address that's right here. Only half of our campaigns get opened on average. Are a lot of them going to spam or junk folders for people? Do people simply not open them? How can we prove this rate? So this is not a black and white answer. It's a very gray, mucky, murky answer. And there are several parts to it. The first part of that is that this is not a perfect rating system. Okay, your rate of opens doesn't show you perfectly who's opening it and who's not. The reason for that is that the way Mailchimp counts opens is that they embed a 1-pixel picture into your campaign. And so when that picture gets uploaded, that's counted as an open. So what happens for some people is that they have their email client set to not automatically download images. And so even though they've read it, Mailchimp has no way to know that they've read it. So the first thing is, don't assume that just because it shows it unread means that it's unread. The second thing is that 50% is actually a really high number. Okay, so typically people get anywhere between 30 and 60%. So you're actually doing pretty well with your percentage as far as Mailchimp is concerned. Now, what you can do is especially if you have partners that you really, really, really want to make sure are getting them, is that you can reach out to those partners with a message that says something like, we've just recently started sending our updates through a new method. We want to make sure, we've noticed that some people haven't been getting them, and we'd like to make sure that you are. Are you getting our updates in the way that you prefer? And then if they come back saying they're not receiving them, that'll allow you to kind of have that conversation with them and help them fix whatever settings they need to make sure they receive them correctly. Okay. So you say I could not use a Gmail email address to send my Mailchimp campaigns. That is correct. The reason for that is, again, Mailchimp has really strict controls to try to make sure that their program's not being used as a spam account. And so because of that, they only allow organizational emails to be verified and to be authenticated. So in order to basically make sure that it doesn't end up in spam, you have to have some sort of organizational email. Before we got started, I had one person who said that they might have some advanced questions. Feel free to go ahead and ask any Mailchimp related questions at this point.